Hey, it's Tim here. In today's video, we're actually going to be taking a look at a video suggestion from a subscriber to find out what happens when formatting doesn't do what you expect it to do inside of Tableau. Let's fix that. Let's get stuck in. Okay, so I'm here on the suggestions page. You can actually find a link to this in any description of any one of my videos. If you click the feedback link, you'll actually go to a platform called Canny, and here users can send in suggestions, and then those suggestions make it onto my roadmap, and I promise eventually I do make videos on them. So at the moment we have about 19 suggestions, and a few of them have actually worked their way onto the roadmap because I thought they were fantastic ideas for a video. In this particular one, this actually started off as a dual axis formatting question. And essentially we worked through the problem here just using chat and screenshots. And eventually I figured out that the issue here wasn't anything to do with dual axis formatting. It was in fact just formatting being really difficult to understand in Tableau. So out came the suggestion for this video, and here we are. Now, before we get into the video, I also just want to show you this video by SQL Bell. This is a video that's got 20,000 views. You should absolutely watch it. It's a 40-minute tutorial, detailed tutorial on formatting worksheets. I'm showing you this because this video is so good, there's no point in me making a video when it's already been done. My video is about troubleshooting formatting. This video is about understanding formatting. So go and watch this video before you watch this one if you haven't watched it before. Otherwise, watch this video, finish it, and then at the end, I'll pitch this video again because I think it's fantastic. Let's carry on. Now, what I've done is in Tableau, I have set up a troublesome workbook. It's not beautiful at all, but essentially I've set up a table and some sheets. And what I want to show you is how to sort of finesse formatting when it's not doing what you expect it to do, where to look, how to fix issues, but also more importantly, how to make sure you're checking all the relevant places you need to check for the formatting to stick and do exactly what you want it to do. Now, I've got a scatter plot here, and I've got a table. Now, these are not the most beautiful tables, but we're going to fix these two things. Let's first start with this scatter plot. So let's sort of try and address the issues here. Number one, you can obviously see that the axis has some sort of formatting color. We want to remove that, set that to white. The other thing I want to do is sort out the formatting in the tooltip, because the formatting on the axis looks fine. You've got the profit and sales, and there's no decimal places. But if I hover over one of these data points, you can see that I've got a disordinate amount of decimal places there. And more importantly, the profit value there hasn't got a particular sign in front of it. And yet here on the axis, it's got a dollar sign. But at the same time, the sales is in pounds. So what's clearly happening here is that on this bottom axis here, you can see I've got pounds and here I've got dollars. I need to standardize that so that it's pounds all the way across. For me, it should be pounds because I'm in Europe and I'm using the European version of Superstore sales. So that should be all pounds. And then, of course, I want to go and address these tooltips. If you just look over here, this is a disordinate number of decimal places. So where to start? Well, what I normally recommend people do is they first go look at the data source, because it's actually possible in a data source to specify a number format. So you can see here that I'm just clicking on the canvas, nothing is selected. And on the left-hand side, we already have the formatting pane open. If I want to close that, I just need to hit this X icon here. If I go ahead and select that, it will close that down and you'll just get the usual data fields that you're used to over here. Now, if I go down to the profit value, you can see here, if I right click on profit and I go down to default properties, here you can actually specify a number format, and this gets baked into the metadata for the data source. So if I go ahead and select number format, you can see here that the currency is set to custom. It's set to 0 decimal places. It's set to format negative values in this manner. The display units are not sort of aggregated to any particular level, so it's just basically showing me the numbers as they are. You can choose thousands, millions, billions, and billions with a G. But here you can see that this is actually saying the dollar sign. And this is actually probably one of the first places we're going to come and fix this. Because if I go and here and click OK, and then I right click on this and I select format, the option I get here will show something different to what I'm expecting. Note specifically where I clicked. So this is really super important. I'm right clicking on the axis, I'm selecting format, and then when I come over here, you'd think that this pane is going to allow me to format the axis. Actually, it's not. Again, you need to pay attention here, because at the very top, you can see that it says pane. So even though I right clicked on the axis and I selected format, it by default loaded the pane. It's on pane because that was the last place I left when I was in the formatting pane. It's not doing anything smart when I click on the axis. It's just reopening the formatting pane and carrying on where I left. So you can kind of sometimes come in here and look at this and go, well, this is all formatted to numbers. So where on earth is that formatting happening? It's not happening here. And then you'll start to go around in circles trying to understand what's going on, when in fact, you just need to go over here to axis, because the axis is indeed what we have right here. So let's go ahead and select axis, and here you can see a bit of information. You can see the default font formatting here at the top. You can see the scale, and you can see the title. So these are all formatting options you've got available to you. If I go down here, you can see it's set to automatic. I could come in here, select currency custom, and you'll see that it actually overrides what's there. And I'm actually able to change this to pounds, as it has done, and go down and fix this. Now, this is what most people do. They go to the problem, they fix the problem, they call it a day. However, in this particular case, I'd actually argue this is the wrong way to fix this problem. Although it's correct in this chart, if I was to go ahead and duplicate this sheet, you'll see that it carries it through. And then if I just go ahead and clear this whole chart, clear everything off it, and bring the profit back onto... where's the profit gone? Bring the profit back onto the rows, you'll see that the dollar sign comes back. So although I fix it on the chart, and I'm just in the same sheet that I just created through a duplicate, as soon as I clear the sheet, it's lost that formatting. I want the formatting to stick on this particular value wherever I take it. So the fix I applied over here is the incorrect fix. The correct fix is to go back to the default properties for that particular field. So let's go ahead and select that, right click on profit, go down to default properties, number format, select that, and here I can actually change this back to a pound sign. Now that's correct. I'll set it to decimal places. I'll set this all here correctly. I'll set OK, and now you can see that this is actually correct. And now anytime I bring the profit value into the visualization, it's going to use that default formatting. I don't have to sort of mess around. And then if you want to customize a particular chart, you can of course still select format, go to the axis, because we're trying to format the axis, go to the numbers pane, and then here you could choose to do currency custom, maybe do thousands like so, and remove the decimal places, and you can format that independent of what's going on with the number formatting. That's why those two options are separate. You need that sort of control to be specific on some charts where the scale doesn't make sense. So it's a very sort of convoluted fix. I sort of showed you two problems there. All we were trying to do is fix this axis, and now that's done. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is, of course, we still need to change the color. So the color I'm trying to change here is over here on the left and over here on the bottom. And this is where it's important to really bear in mind Tableau's terminology when it talks about columns and rows. Now, when I'm talking about columns and rows, I'm talking about these items up here. And at the moment, you can see that if I look at my columns, I've got sales. So columns is a vertical sort of donation. So everything in the vertical column is going to be the sales value. So you can see here, that's why sale goes along the bottom, because essentially this data is stacking up vertically. On rows, we've got profit, so it's going from left to right. So I can look here on the left axis and you can see the values there. And so when I actually go to format the axis, if I just go ahead and format this, the coloring will give me a couple of options. So let's go ahead and try and address the coloring of this particular axis. Now, again, I never know why this is so small, but here at the very, very top, you've got a couple of grouped formatting options. Let's just go through those very quickly. I'll click on A. This is typically where all the text formatting is done. And notice that as soon as you go into that, you get three options. You get the whole entire sheet, you get the rows, and you get the columns. And so this actually refers to what I was just talking about. And this is again where it's a little bit confusing, because there's a little bit of a hierarchy built into this. You see, when you format the sheet, it actually automatically applies anything you select there to rows and columns. And then if you subsequently edit rows or columns or both, it's applied to just those specific areas. So when it comes to the coloring, I'm able to affect the coloring across the whole entire sheet, or I can target just the rows and the columns. Now, if I keep going across the top, you'll see that I've got a couple more text and formatting options. So the first one is obviously text. The next one is alignment. So formatting alignment. Again, you've got sheet, rows, and columns going along the middle. You've got color, and you can see here we've got some familiar colors that we're going to try and address soon. We've got the borders that go around things like tables. We'll look at that, an example of that in a second. And then we've got lines. So any lines that exist in the visualization are all formatted here. Okay. Now the very last area is this one over here on the left-hand side. And this is where most of the formatting issues arise, because it's not apparent and it's not obvious that you can actually go into this particular dropdown and select the measure or the field that you're specifically formatting. So if I go down to this dropdown, select fields, you'll see that I actually get all the items that are already in my visualization. Okay, so we've gone through the whole formatting setup. I've shown you where everything is. Now let's apply some of that knowledge. Let's apply some of that thinking to what we're trying to do. So let's first click back onto the canvas. Let's attack this header. Let's change this header so we can make sure that it's white like the rest of the chart. So let's go ahead to the color, the little paint can over here. And when I click on that, you can already see that there are some items here that have that formatting. Now, what is interesting is that it's being applied multiple times. So you've got the header there, you've got the header there, and you've got the header there. And again, there's a bit of a hierarchy because whatever I select here at the top fills its way down to these other options. But don't forget that these options don't necessarily affect my visualization. I have seen sometimes people change the total header and then not realize that it's not actually changing the visualization because they have no totals. Same with the grand total. So if you want to affect the header, you're going to have to go up here to the top and select, let's select green just so you can see that change. And notice that it changes everything. It changes both the profit and the sales axis simultaneously. The reason it does that is because we are editing at the sheet level. I know I'm repeating this, but I'm going to keep repeating it until it goes in. We're editing at the sheet level, so it's applying it to both the columns and the rows. If, however, I set this back to none, you can see it goes to white. I then go to rows. You'll see that some of the options gray out because they don't apply to rows and columns. And so here I can go to none. I can set this to yellow. And now it's only applying the effect to the rows, in this case where profit is. And if you're wondering how I know that, it's because up here at the top it says rows, profit. And so when I'm editing the rows just over here, then you can expect this color change here to be applied to that. So I'm just trying to sort of connect these dots because when you get stuck with formatting, somewhere in that chain of events, something is taking precedence over the rest of the visualization. So just be super aware of all those settings, where they are. If I go back to sheet here, for example, you'll see that when I look at this, it says there is no coloring applied. And so you can easily come to this conclusion that, hey, what's going on here? There's no coloring applied. Why is this behaving the way it is? You might even get frustrated, right click on this, select format, and this time it sends you to the pane and you only see text formatting options. You might then go to the coloring and you'll go back here and you'll see, oh, there's still no blue selection there. So where on earth is this coming from? It's actually yellow, not blue. So you can get stuck very easily and you can get frustrated. And this is where you probably reach out for help. You just go around clicking through all the menus, trying to find that color. And once you found it, you change it and your problem's solved. But it's just really important to know where the fix is being applied, like the first example I showed you. So we've changed the color of the axis. Everything is good. Now the next problem we need to sort out is alignment. So you can see here that this is going vertically. This doesn't make sense. I'd like to read this from left to right. And here, this is formatted correctly. So let's try and resolve that. So using your newfound knowledge, let's try and see if you can figure out what to do here. You might think you need to right click on this particular axis and select format. Note that that doesn't do what you expect it to do. It simply opens up the previous selection you had. And in this case, it is actually pointing me to the axis. You can see here that if I go to the very top, it's pointing me to the axis. But it's also telling me that something is highlighted here. You can see that fields is highlighted in a slight gray. And so if I go down to that, you can see that sales is what's selected there. And that's why this is happening. So we've got the axis here. Now, in terms of the options, you can see I don't have any alignment options. And you've got to remember that the alignment options are just up here at the top. So let's go ahead and click on those lines. And how are we looking at the formatting alignment? Now, on the sheet level, it says that everything is set to automatic. So everything is going to do what Tableau does by default. But remember, we are looking at cells, and the cells are found in the column. So cells are feeding the columns. Therefore, over here in the formatting, I should probably look in the columns. And so if we go to columns, you'll see that there is actually a custom header alignment, the header being this area here at the bottom. So this table area here. And if we go into that, you can see that the alignment is set there to flip them 90 degrees. And so if I set that to automatic, it now looks correct. And that change has been applied. So we're making a lot of headway. The formatting has started to come together. We've just got one more change to make, and that's inside of the tooltip. Now, if I go and hover over this, you'll see that the numbers changed. And the reason this has changed is essentially twofold. Earlier on, when I changed the formatting, the default formatting for the particular value, it also caught that over here and has applied that as well. So pretty much that change I made to the default formatting has already been fixed. That's another advantage of coming here and doing that. But you might want to change this. You might want to say profit should be rounded up to the nearest 1,000 as a simple example. So how would we do that? Well, my general approach here is if you want to edit anything in the chart, always start by selecting any white space, right click, select format, and that will open up the formatting options here on the left-hand side. Now, once this is open, don't assume that it's opened it on the correct pane. Again, we're trying to format the tooltip value in here, so 1,927 for profit. We're trying to format that value so it says 2,000 or 1,000, okay? Now, if I look to the left here, as I click through this, you'll see that I can't really sort of very clearly see the thing I need to change. All of this is actually sort of referring to nothing numeric whatsoever. So what I need to make sure I do is I go to the fields and I actually select the thing I want to change. In this case, it's profit. When I select profit, you'll see the numerical formatting actually turns up. So if I right click and select format again, you'll see that I just get text options here, nothing happens. It's only when I go to fields and then select the profit do I get the numerical formatting options. And now everything that I want to change is going to show up. I've got the axis and the pane available to me. Remember, the axis changes everything you can see in this little box over here on the left-hand side. And this also as well here on the bottom. So now that we've got this open, let's just hover over this and you'll see that it still says 1,927. And what I want to do is essentially make this change here in the visualization. And so the way you have to think of this is there are actually two spaces in this visualization. There is the pane, which is basically everything inside of the chart. And then you've got the header, which is essentially this space here for sales and this space here for profit, okay? And those also live in the axis. So the header and the axis, you can sort of think of them as the same thing. In the context of a table, it's the header. In the context of a visualization, it's the axis, but more or less the same thing. And so now that I've explained that, what we can now do is we can go over here to the pane, make sure we're on the pane. Now click on axis just to show you that. Click on pane, and now what we can do is we can start formatting the numerical values. Remember, we've got profit ticked, so it's only going to change this for profit. So let's go to numbers, and you can see here it says 8 decimal places. And so this is sort of strange because, of course, we've actually changed the formatting in the default number formatting to work with this particular thing. So what on earth is going on? Well, in this particular case, the default formatting is taking precedence over the formatting that's actually been set here. But if I go ahead and change this, let's say I set this to 0 decimal places, we'll set it to millions, and I go back and hover over it, it's not making any change whatsoever. Okay, so I'm editing the video, and yeah, I just realized that it bugged out on me and I didn't actually offer a solution. So I'm here in the future to address that. So if we head back to the chart, you can see here that it's still got 8 decimal places. And what I was doing in the video is I was right clicking the white space, selecting format, going to fields, going to profit, going here to the numbers pane and essentially changing that. That's essentially what I was doing. So if I just try and edit that, let's just do this. Let's just do 3 decimal places. You see, if I hover over it, it has actually changed. And this is because I'm using a newer version of Tableau. And in this version, it works. So what happens if it bugs out on you? How do you know that it's a bug? How do you know that you need to reset something? Well, the best way to do this is to actually reset the formatting on the sheet and then try and apply your formatting changes again. And if you can't do something that sounds simple or straightforward, then it's probably a bug. So let me show you how to do that. I'll just get my annotation tools running here. They're not running, so let me open them up. So let's go to Presentify. Okay, so if we go to the tab at the very bottom here, one of the things you can do is you can copy the formatting. So let's say you've got the formatting on one sheet and you want to apply it to this one. You can actually go here, copy the formatting, go here, paste the formatting, and it will take all the formatting from the previous one and apply it to this one. That's if you want to copy from one sheet to another. But in order to reset the formatting, if you go to the worksheet, you can go to clear, and you can see here that it's got clear formatting. Select that, and it will get rid of all the formatting that was previously applied. And then you can, of course, now go to something else that was working. Maybe you duplicated it. Maybe you've got something else that you'd like to use, and go ahead and paste the formatting, and it brings in all the formatting that you had before. So that was a super important trick for showing you how to get around these bugs, on how to know if you're facing a bug or not, and also just how to fix things. Sometimes it's really difficult when the product doesn't do what you expect it to do, as you saw in this video. So you just have to work around that. I know the product, so I know the bugs when I see them. But if that's you, just try and do something else. And if you can't do something straightforward, it's probably a bug. Anyway, back to the video. Now, if this was a table, this would change this. It just depends on the context of the visualization. And this is where I sort of wish formatting was more straightforward in Tableau, because you kind of have to hunt where you need to make the change. If I was to go here, for example, onto the axis, and this particular scale value here is going to change. So if I set this to 2 decimal places in this place, it's changing. But then if I switch to the pane, let's right click on format here, make sure that profit is selected. Go in here and set this value to millions. You can see that it's definitely set, but whatever I do with the sales or profit, it's just not changing that value. And so really do hunt for formatting issues. Make sure that you really understand what's going on and how they're being applied. Okay, so that's a very sort of brief introduction to this particular problem in a chart. If we switch over to a table, we've got a slightly different problem here. Now here we've got a bit of an arrangement problem, and we've also got a bit of sort of a poor design choice. Now this table is actually just a rehashed version of the chart we just did. To show you how I made it, I just right clicked on the chart and I selected duplicate as cross tab. What that does is it essentially builds a table for you. And if I go over to the next sheet, it's created that table. And so I basically messed this chart up deliberately. So we're going to try and come back to this particular place. So let's go over to this chart, and we can actually make a couple of things easy right from the get-go. Now, if I right click on the top and select format, you'll see that this time it actually does correctly take me to the right place. So here, I clicked on this sort of small section here. I'll highlight it in red so you can see what I'm talking about. And it's actually taking me correctly to the header formatting. Now, in this case, there's actually 2 levels of the header. So the first level is this very top one over the top. And then the next level is this one over here. And these are essentially relating to the measure name, sorry about all the arrows, and the subcategory. Okay, so these are all there. This is all just being made available to us, and we're basically visualizing it on top of everything that's going on. So to fix this, I'm actually just going to remove this subcategory just to make the table a little bit easier. And now we can see that we've got the 3 columns we started with. So sometimes formatting is about removing something to stop the view becoming too complicated. The other thing is that this formatting here is the items are rotated the wrong way. I just want to read from left to right. So again, I can right click and format in this particular case because it's a table. And now that I'm here, I need to make sure that I go to the header alignment. So we can go to the alignment options, okay? And then when we look at the sheet, you can see that it gives me everything. But actually, I want to go specifically to the columns. And here you can see that there's a custom header alignment. Again, it's rotated 90 degrees. Let's set that to automatic, and now they're reading in the correct manner. Okay, now we click out, everything's looking a little bit better. If we look at the profit though, if you look at the profit, you can see that this now does have 8 decimal places. So what's going on here? Why is this different? Well, earlier on, you noticed that when I was in the formatting options, those formatting options wouldn't apply to the chart. But in this case, if I right click and format this, and I go to fields, and I go to profit, and I go to numbers, you can see that the 8 decimal places has actually stuck here. So if I just go in here and reduce this to 0 decimal places, that's going to be perfectly fine. We'll do this in thousands. Actually, we'll do it in thousands and add 2 decimal places back, and that will leave us with something like this. Okay, so this is great. So far, so good. Now, what we're trying to get to is this: no banding, no coloring. So let's go back and try and address the banding and the coloring. If I look at this, the banding is sort of applying every four items. Okay, so we have 4 items and 4 items and 4 items and so on and so forth. And on the top, it seems to be applying itself every 3 items. So every 3 items is a different color. So that gives me a hint of where to look. So first I need to find the row editing features and the column editing features. I need to get to the color section of that. And then I need to find a way of stopping the banding so we don't get this banding. And I have 2 sets of banding. I have it in the header and we have it inside of the pane, inside of the actual visualization. So let's go and address that. Let's right click on cells. Let's start over here at the top. I always like to right click on format if it will let me. There we go, format. We've got cells selected. Now in this particular case, the header is what has the color. And if I go to this option, you can see there's an immediate option saying here, shading, go to that. Okay, if we change that to none, that solves it, but it doesn't stop the banding. So let's go ahead, right click on format again. Let's address this properly. If I go and select on the paint bucket, you can see that I actually get the full controls here. And here I can set it to none. And this is perfect because again, it's applying it to columns. So it's only going to change this for the measure names, not for the customer name field, which is actually a row. And if I look further down here, there's the column banding options. And the banding options essentially are broken down into a few areas. First of all, the scope of the banding. Then you've got the color, and then you've got the band size, how thick the band is. So in this particular case, the band is set to 3. So if I go back 1, you can see that it's set to 2. And if I go back 1 again, it's basically set to that item. So we can actually just go ahead here and select none, deselect that, and you can see the banding has been removed. So that's good. I actually like to set these all the way to the beginning, just reset them like they were never applied, because then you know that won't mess anything up. The last area is if I right click here on the left hand side, select format. And again, we've got the same scenario. I could just go ahead and change the shading here, set it to white, but the header isn't going to change with that. Even though I've got that selected, what we actually need to do is go to the paint bucket and go to the sheet. And here we can actually select none across the whole entire thing. I could have also gone into rows and selected none, but because I want this applied to both the columns and the rows, I can just actually go into the sheet, select none, remove all the banding that was there. And if I go further down, just over here, you can see we've got a slightly more complicated banding options because we're in the sheet. So the sheet option up here, sorry, just there. You can see that I get row and column banding options here. So I can actually edit both of them instead of just editing them one at a time. So I can set this to none, and you can see the sheet pane options disappear there. And that's essentially what this option does. The pane refers to this particular space. So if I set that to none, that disappears. And if I set none to the header, you can see this disappears. And then I can also just set this all the way back. And if I just show you what that does, let's just set it like that. It's just changing the size of the banding. So if you just want to set the banding to basically 1 or every other row, then you just set it up to 1. But the very first one is 0 essentially. And it just looks at the table and the context. So it really depends on the way you've designed the table in this particular case. So we can set this all to none. And now we've reset the view exactly how it should be. Okay. So hopefully that's been an insight to how formatting can get stuck inside a Tableau. It's by no means consistent, and what I've just sort of showed you what is supposed to be a very brief guide. Now, if you follow other YouTubers, especially SQL Bell, she's got a great video on formatting that you should just go and watch. It basically covers everything that you need to know, and so that's what you should go and watch. I'm not going to bother doing a video when someone's already done a great job, so go watch that video. I think it's going to be really valuable, and it's a properly done video as well. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this, let me know in the comments below, and yeah, be sure to head to tablowtim.canny.io. There'll be a link in the description and or in the comments. And yeah, suggest some of ideas for videos in the future. You can see this is what's currently in progress, what's on the table. I do get to them. I don't get to them straight away. Don't expect to post there and then have a video in the next week. It takes me a bit longer to kind of get to this. I've had this running for about 2 months now. So if you've got ideas, head to this page, fill out some of the suggestions, have a vote. The nice thing about this is when you sign up to do this, you do have to use your email. And so what it allows me to do is actually send a response. So you'll get notifications as the video moves through all these different stages of planning and organization and production. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.